Hey there, Danny here. So maybe you've been playing guitar for a while now, and at a certain point as your playing progresses, you'll probably have the thought, I want to learn some Jimi Hendrix. It's great sounding music, and it's kind of just a rite of passage for every guitarist to learn some Hendrix when they're at a certain level. So you decide to trawl through YouTube search and find that there are millions of how to play like Hendrix videos, how to play this solo or that solo. There's just so much information out there on this one guitar player that it's easy to become overwhelmed and just give up entirely, which leads you to go and search for videos of dogs talking like people or volcanoes erupting in the distance. This video is for the person who's already got some basic guitar under their belt. You can play some riffs and some bar chords, but you're a little bit perplexed by the idea of authentically playing late 60s style guitar as typified by Jimi Hendrix. I'm going to show you just one tip, specifically one chord shape or chord voicing, that will go a long way in demystifying the guitar sound of the late 60s and is guaranteed to make you sound more authentic. But first, we have to take a little stroll down memory lane. It's 1967, and the commonly told narrative goes something like this. Hendrix arrives in London, forms a band, releases Are You Experienced, and blows everyone away with his use of feedback, distortion, and crazy stage antics. No one's ever heard anything as raw and powerful as this. Cue Hendrix going down in rock history as the guy who was essentially the first to turn his guitar up really loud, do crazy stuff on stage, inventing the genre of heavy rock as we know it today. While this is true to some extent, bands like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Cream and The Who had all been making use of heavy distortion and feedback for some time, and Pete Townshend's crazy stage antics famously predate Hendrix by at least a couple of years. In my opinion, Hendrix's most culturally significant contribution to the world of guitar playing was what might sometimes be referred to as his Hendrixisms. These are little licks that feature on his records, often in the rhythm guitar part, in the gaps between vocal lines, not necessarily in the solos. They'd sound something like this. You can tell just how culturally pervasive these Hendrixisms became because of the fact that after 1967, when Are You Experienced was released, they started showing up a lot in the Beatles music, and as we all know, the Beatles couldn't really do anything without it becoming a massive cultural movement, for good and for bad. So let's get into it. To me, the quintessential Hendrixism, the one that's really going to get you on the road to sounding like him, is this one. That's it. In truth, it's less of a guitar lick and more of a position on the guitar, or what we might call a voicing. As you may already know, there are pretty much 5 ways to play every single chord on the guitar, and these 5 ways are referred to as the caged system. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the caged system here, because it probably deserves its own 20-minute video, but I will recommend that you go check out one of the thousands of videos on the topic elsewhere on YouTube before you carry on with this one, because it will probably help you understand what I'm talking about a little bit more. So let's take the chord E. Obviously you can play E as an open chord here, but if we want to do it in this Hendrixy way, we have to play it up here. You can hear that they're both E. One's just a slightly different voicing. So to play this one, we've got our first finger on the 9th fret of the 4th and 3rd string barring, and then the 3rd finger comes down on the 11th fret of the 5th string. It's just a 3-note voicing really, and you can play the low E string with that. You can take that shape and you can use it for pretty much any major chord, so it would just be elsewhere on the guitar. So for instance, this is E, so D is 2 frets lower because it's a tone lower than E, so it would be there. C, you'd play it a tone lower than D, so 2 frets lower. A would be 3 frets lower than C. So what you have to do is just memorize which part of the guitar applies to which chord. So for E, you just have to memorize that it's here on the 9th fret and the 11th. For D, you just have to memorize it's on the 7th and the 9th. The really Hendrixy bit of this is where you take that shape and instead of just playing it straight, like that, you hammer on with your 3rd finger. You can hear that's a bit more Hendrixy. So all that I'm doing there is with my 1st finger barring the 9th fret on the 5th, 4th and 3rd strings, and then hammering on to the 5th string, 11th fret with my 3rd finger. So although it sounds kind of stupidly simple, there's nothing to it really. It only really started appearing in mainstream music after Hendrix's arrival. So Don't Let Me Down by the Beatles famously uses this kind of hammer-on thing. Lola by the Kinks, which is a song that was written after Hendrix's arrival, uses that kind of hammer-on technique in the intro and the breaks between the verses. So you can see in both those tunes that neither of them are just doing that by itself. They're kind of adding some extra notes. And these notes are just notes you have at your disposal when you're in this position. So let's go over what they are. So you can see in the tab, 9, 12, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 12, 9, 12. If you play any of those notes when you're trying to sort of do a little chord melody in this position, it's going to sound fine. So how should you try to incorporate all of this into your playing? Well, my best piece of advice would be just to learn a bunch of songs that make use of this shape. So why don't we take Don't Let Me Down, the Beatles song that I was talking about earlier, and just look at it in a bit more detail. So we're just talking about the intro here, the bit that goes... So that's just a big E chord. So nothing fancy happening there, it's just the shape that we learned. So barring on the 9th fret with the first finger, on the 4th and 3rd string, and then the 11th fret with the 3rd finger on the 5th string. Then you bar the 9th fret up to the 5th string, so 3rd string, 4th string and 5th string all covered by the bar, and then you hammer on. So all of that together. Then after that you just play the 4th and 3rd string with this bar, but you can keep your first finger where it is, so you've got... Then you don't hammer on, but the 3rd finger does come on to the 11th fret of the 4th string, so like that. Then you take it off, play. So we've got like that. And then the first finger bars those 3 strings again, so that's all the 9th fret. Then little finger comes on to the 12th fret of the 5th string. So we've got... And then 3rd finger replaces the little finger, 3rd finger on the 11th fret of the 5th string. So that's it. Amazing riff, and it's pretty much just a Hendrix lick. Another thing to stress is, once you learn something like that in the original key, so we just learned Don't Let Me Down in E, transpose it into another key. So there's E. So let's say we want to learn it in D. So remember we said D is 2 frets lower than E. So you have to take this shape and you have to move it 2 frets lower. Do the same thing but do it in C, which is 2 frets lower than D. This is going to really help you kind of cement things in your mind. You're going to remember the shape a lot better if you're doing it in slightly different contexts like this. Also, it's going to help for other tunes. Say you want to play that shape over a D. If you've practiced it, you're going to know that the D shape is there. So what have we learned? We've learned that you can take any major chord and play it like this in a few logical steps. And that is the quintessential Hendrix voicing. If you can play that, you're well on your way to being able to play loads of Hendrix songs and licks. If you've made it this far, thanks so much for watching. If you have any thoughts at all, just leave them in the comments below. Remember to check out my other videos and to like and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of thing in the future. See you next time.